If you're like me and you love Reddit, then you know you'll find stories that you'll never see anywhere else. Reddit is the real deal. Like on TikTok and Instagram, we're trying to be unhinged, but not too unhinged. But the real unhinged people, they're found on Reddit. Hence the birth of my new baby, Real Immigrant Stories from Reddit. If you're new here, hi, my name is Tenda. I am an immigrant living in Canada. I'm originally from Zimbabwe, and I'm interested in all the things immigrant, especially the real stories about life after immigration, or like people trying to move. Disclaimer, I'm not an immigrant lawyer or like a know-how of how people move. I moved to Canada in 2023, and I don't really have all the knowledge regarding how to move and everything. My niche is more about the settlement, like being real and raw about immigration, life after immigration, and all that. I do have a playlist on my YouTube on how to move to Canada using express entry. Today we'll be reading from 3 posts, and these 3 posts have different things to offer, and some of them will shock us, some of them will be like, some of them will, I don't know. We'll learn a few life lessons. We'll dissect them. We'll talk. Kick. I don't know. It's a new segment. Try not to be harsh. I am going to try my best to go into it. I got my phone here, so I might be reading from them. I'm not going to read the whole thing, TDLR. But yeah, just to sort of like get into it, try to understand exactly what the situation is. As you know, there's a lot of things that are happening next door, USA, and a lot of the Americans are wanting to move to Canada. So I found a Reddit post from somebody who works in Canadian immigration and wanted to sort of like send a PSA to all Americans that are moving to Canada. And they wanted the Americans to know that immigration is not just a cutesy, this, that. Immigration is a real thing for different people in Canada. Like, there are refugees here that are going through things, and so it was more like, do not bring the all-American point of view over here. While Canada is your neighbor and everything really looks good over here, on paper it's very different from what you know in America. The person gave a disclaimer that they are an immigrant. Their grandparents and parents were also immigrants. They shared the reality of what immigrants go through, and in Canada they talked about how some qualifications do not translate, and people who are qualified nurses, doctors, engineers are working at Tim Hortons as a survival job because some of their qualifications do not translate, and they had to go through, the recertification process. While this might not happen to Americans, there are other things that might happen to Americans where, jobs are also, the job market is crazy. 1, 2, salaries are not what Americans are used to. Apparently, Americans get paid better. American doctors get paid better. American nurses get paid better. American dollar stretches better in America than it does Canadian dollars. So if they move to Canada, they'll be paid in Canadian dollars, and they might get shocked when they get their money that it's not what they think it would be. Another thing that they mentioned is that while American healthcare is not perfect and Canadian healthcare is portrayed as free, some things might shock them, that they might have long wait times in the ER. They might spend years before securing family doctors if they stay in certain places. You still have to pay for the ambulance even when you call it. So some of those things they mentioned really resonated. Okay, I will read this part verbatim. Many of my clients left political situations that they thought were unattainable. Maybe that's true for you. Many of them wanted safety for their children. Maybe that will motivate you too. But the push factor of being mad at politics isn't as important as the pull factor of living somewhere else meaningful to you. Without the pull, you're an expert. Hanging out with only people from your country, sneering at the others, otherization of others. And this is the part that made me like say, your displeasure with America might get you out of the door, but it's not enough to build a life on. Maybe you actually love Canada to visit, but Canada as an immigrant is a different issue. Are you ready to assimilate? You know, this really resonated with me a lot because for some people that are immigrating to Canada, they're immigrating out of necessity. They're immigrating because their countries are being bombed, there's war in their countries, their rights are being infringed on, they're literal, like their country has no currency of their own, there's no jobs for the youth, there's no roads, ambulances, and all that stuff. And then there's people who are moving because, you know, they voted for a guy who turned out to be unhinged, even though they knew he was unhinged. So what this post was talking about was more like, hey, you're welcome to come here, but America is not Canada. Canada is cute, is your cutesy little neighbor. Canada is doing good. Canada is looking for everybody to come. Canada is it has its open door policy. But like moving here, you have to be ready to face some of these things. You have to be ready to see that some of these things, they're like, it's not all cute, right? There are real issues here. We have immigrants from all over the place. Leave that, you know, mentality of immigrants are bad down at the door, because we have immigrants here. When you move here, you're an immigrant too. So yeah, I found that post really amazing. A lot of people would assume that moving next door is not like different, it's going to be an easy feat, but no, it's not. Our next story today reads, I moved to Canada, but it wasn't what I expected. So from what the person was describing, they moved to Canada from Colombia for a master's program. They had a good job back home. They had a strong circle. Everything was good, but they wanted to move to Canada for their master's program. They were going to move with their fiance, but the relationship turned sour before they even moved to Canada. And they have been here for 6 months now, and honestly things are not going as they thought that they would. The education price is, the tuition is ridiculous. They do not have social life. The emotional stress is crazy, and they're thinking if they had finished their masters or completed their masters back home in Colombia, they would still have this support system. It will be a lot cheaper, and they'll be able to continue the music career. They have a music career. And the person who posted this, the PO, is 26, and they are rethinking their path of whether they should continue being here and continue their masters, or they should be able to go back home. Like, yeah. So they were asking if anybody has ever made the decision of going back home, or like how to navigate that decision. Honestly, when I first moved here, I didn't understand why anyone would want to leave Canada. Like coming from Zimbabwe, coming from Zimbabwe, I was like, hey, I'm here now. I will never leave. But after living here for almost 3 years now, I sort of like can understand and appreciate why anyone would want to move back home. Like, this country is great, but there are certain things that you lose when you're coming here. Like, they're mentioning their social life, their job that they had that was going a long way, and also, what else were they mentioning? And this is interesting because usually immigrants are portrayed as people that are coming from like dire situations. I've had people ask me like, if my life was so good where I'm from, how come I moved here? And like, sometimes you don't recognize that home will always be home. But after living in both places, that's when you can do a pro and con of what you lost versus what you gained. While it's a privilege for some of us to move to Canada, for somebody else who thinks that they had a better work-life balance when they were living in wherever they were living, it's a very tough decision or to think about, like, especially in the beginning. Moving here, the first 6 months were hard. In fact, I can say the first year was hard. I had no social life. I had a baby. I felt isolated. I felt like, oh my God, it's just me and this little tiny human. It's just me and my little family, and like, things are very hard. So I can imagine somebody who moved here alone, they were going through a heartbreak, they're in school, tuition is expensive. I can appreciate why they think going back might be a better deal for them. It's very difficult. It's not going to be an easy feat, just moving abroad or moving somewhere, like being in a place where leaving everything you know, and especially in the first months where everything seems very scary. Now I'm gonna bring it back to you. If you're in this person's situation, would you move back home? Especially because now that they are a student, I don't even know what their final plans are. Were they just coming here for education and going back? And how expensive is that? Or were they hoping to move along with their immigration plans, go from being a student to a work permit, to then getting their PR, to then getting citizenship? They didn't mention all that. So it all depends. For me, I think it would depend with what the goal of the person was. Was the goal of this person just getting education and going back? In which case they can do that back at home. If they were playing a long game of like, okay, I'm here for my education, but eventually I would like to settle, because she's young, she's 26. Her master's takes 2 years, and then before you know it, she can apply for her PR and then move here permanently. So I would say if her reasons for coming to Canada were just, I'm here for education and I'm going back, then going back is also a good decision. If her decision was motivated by future immigration plans, then that's a different issue. She might have to just persevere for 2 years and then get into what she really wants. But then again, even if she did her master's back home, she'll still be able to immigrate to Canada either way. So yeah, I don't know, what do you guys think? If you were in this person's shoes and were weighing out how, if you should go back home or if you should stay, what decision do you think you would make? I'm so curious. I'm so curious right now. Anyway, yeah, that's a second story that I read on Reddit this week. The third story, now this one, I loved it. I loved it because it was so informative. It was so... The last story that I read on Reddit that I'm going to share with you today is entitled My Story Moving to Canada as an Immigrant Living with HIV. In this story, the OP shared that they were diagnosed with HIV at 12 years old, and they have been living with the condition for some years now. And so they decided that they wanted to move to Canada as a student. Instead of doing a ton of research regarding the policies around moving to Canada with HIV. The OP said that they went in a deep dive for many, like they use Reddit. Like I say, Reddit is such a melting pot, man. They research, they use Reddit, they use other places, but then they would find somebody asking questions and never, like, people having all these opinions and nobody ever coming back and saying, hey, this is what I actually found out, or this is what happened to my application after I applied while I had this condition and everything. So this is what motivated them to come back with the full story of how they immigrated to Canada while living with HIV. They say that the motivation for leaving their country was that there was poverty. I'm just reading this. There was poverty, crime, violence, domestic abuse, discrimination, and most of their basic needs were not being met, leading them to their life being quite hard, and they started looking for options of immigration, especially to Canada. One of their biggest concerns was the medical exam, which they weren't sure where they would be able to pass, given that they were living with this condition. In the post, they explained that their doctor back home was the hero of their story, because not everybody understands that U equals U. Undetectable means untransmittable. If somebody is taking their meds and the HIV is basically undetectable, they cannot transmit. So they went to their doctor, had all this information. The doctor had a folder of their medical history, explaining when they had that diagnosis, which medications they have been taking. And one thing that made everything really difficult, because they were a student, they would not have health benefits. They would have to pay for their own health insurance, and given that they had this condition, they didn't know exactly how that would pan out. So they explained that they made a medical plan where they would carry their 3 month worth of medicines and the 6 months worth of medicines, and somebody would send them 6 months worth of medicines after they've settled and everything. So they explained all this in their IRCC application. Then they went again on a Reddit route and found out that you cannot carry that much of medicine to come to Canada, which made it difficult. But she just carried the medicine anyway. It was like the worst thing that can happen is them telling her, hey, don't take this much of medicine. And when she got to immigration at CBSA, she explained that, hey, this is what's happening, this is why I have this much of medicine, and that my family back home is going to send more of my medicine because I need this, yada yada yada. The OP said they were okay with that. When the OP got to school, they signed up with the school medic and was eventually signed up with the local clinic, was able to refer them to a program which supplied students with subsidized medicine. They were scared that it would be like, this really puts a strain on our public health thresholds. And yeah, one thing that they did mention is when they were talking to the panel physician, like when you're doing your medicals, you go to a panel physician. They asked the panel physician, what are the odds or what are the chances that their application is going to get denied because of their diagnosis? And the panel physician was like, I cannot give you an answer, yes or no. They're going to say yes or no to you. I cannot give you a definite yes or no answer, but I can tell you that I've had clients before who had the same diagnosis who have been approved. So this alone will not be the basis of your refusal. And I love that. I love that. Yeah, when we were moving here, I had the same issue. I had the same fears because my husband is a type 1 diabetic, and I was wondering if their medical examination was going to be a barrier to application. Luckily it hasn't, and moving here has honestly been a wonderful thing for his diagnosis with type 1 diabetes, because he can access a lot of medicines. He had like problems with his eyes before, and he's been seeing his somebody, I cannot remember, and he goes to a diabetic clinic. He has a family doctor, he has a physio doctor, he has different kinds of doctors who are working together for the longevity of his health. And I find that sometimes moving to Canada is not just about the immediate gain that you get, and it's about holistically your life getting better. But like for OP number 2, that's not the case, and that's the beauty of it. immigration is different for everyone else. Like, tell me what you've learned from this. But I've learned 3 lessons from the first OP. I've learned that while you're moving here, you should be aware that Canada is a different place and there's different things that you experience here, and you should be prepared. Do your research. Canada is not the same as your country. Do your research. If you're coming here and you're American, don't assume that just because it's next door, it's gonna be okay. You know, do your research. The second story has taught me that it's okay to try. It's okay to try to move to some places, and it's okay to fail forward. You know, not everybody is going to come here and like it. Sometimes try, move, get that job, apply for that job, go back to school, move to that country. And if it doesn't work out, at least say, I've tried. So this person has tried. They've taken the strides, and they're trying to see if this place is for them or not. And the only person that can make a decision for them is themselves. Honestly, they're the ones that know how much quality their life was before moving here comparatively. But the importance of it all is try. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back. You can always say, I tried, you know. And the third OP has taught me also the lesson of not to be scared to do something. Like, there's a lot of people who have stopped doing their own research on things and just saying, oh, you know what, I'm HIV positive. Like, nobody is going to allow me to move to their country. Or like, oh my God, how is that going to work? They tried, they did their research, they didn't come up with an answer there and then. They asked their physician to put together a file. They asked the panel physician if it was possible. They applied. They got the answer that they were looking for. There was still an issue of whether they'll be able to carry their medications with them, and they did. Which would have been, okay, you can't take all this medicine in here, and okay, fails. And next thing you know, they managed to get free medication from all of it. So research, the importance of research, the importance of doing things and not just waiting to hear what the next person say. Most people ask you, how do you move to Canada? How I can move to Canada is different from how that person has moved to Canada. You can move to Canada in different ways. You can move as a student. Some people move as visitors and then get their work permits and stuff. Some people move as refugees. Some people move on work permits. Some people move on sponsorship. Some people move from express entry. Some people move, like, there's different ways to move. So doing your own research will show you what's best for your situation, and that's what all 3 OPs has shown me. Research, guys. Anyway, I'll see you next time. I'm hoping that I can do one more of these because I had fun doing this. Please comment, let me know if you liked this, and let me know what you would like to hear next time. Let me know what you learned from all 3 OPs. Let me know what you think the OPs should do, the OP number 2 should do. Let me know what you think. And if you've watched until this time, please, I hope you've subscribed. I hope you have commented. I hope you've liked, and I hope to see you again next time. Love ya.